Alright, so my last video that I made on how I translate Otome games was so popular, and there were so many requests for more that I'm making another one. I also noticed in my first Otome game translating breakdown video that it was mostly narration, so I want to focus more. I'm going to use an excerpt for this video to show how I translate dialogue in Otome games. Let's do this. So here is an excerpt from an actual Otome game I translated a couple years ago. They come in as Excel documents with the character names in column G, the Japanese text in column H, and I insert my English translations into column I. Mr. McDreamy isn't really the character's name. I just changed it so it would be less obvious what this game is. It hasn't come up yet, but the name of the main character of the game is written as name with some programming tags. This is because players get to choose their own names for the main character. In the Ultimate game community, the main character is usually referred to as MC for this reason, since everyone will name theirs differently. Also, a little context for this scene. MC has made a mini snowman of Mr. McDreamy and given it to him as a present. He's a tsundere character, meaning someone who's hot and cold and rough around the edges. MC tells Mr. McDreamy that she always swoons over him and he constantly makes her nervous, insecure, etc. This is extremely common in Otome games. She uses the term furimawasu to describe this, and we'll get to that later. Incidentally, this relationship dynamic in Ultimate games is pretty typical. MC is always a romantic novice who blushes and swoons over the tiniest thing, but I digress. Okay, on to the translation. So first I will Romanize the first line. I don't do this step when I actually translate, I'm just doing it to help everyone who can't read the hiragana and kanji. So, Mr. McDreamy says, "Honto ni nanda yo?" I'll start by making the particles and such red, so we can separate our first words to define honto and nan. Honto means the truth, but honto ni means seriously. You may also notice that honto is spelled without the u at the end. This makes it slangier, especially for the expression honto ni. Nan is a shortened version of nani, which means what. Da is the casual form of desu, which is just something Japanese people put at the ends of their sentences. Yo makes something emphatic. So as you'll see in the next transformation, I made nandayo, what gives. What the hell also works, but it's sort of considered vulgar. I'm discouraged from using any profanity in my translations. And if you don't know what inflection the speaker is using, what the hell can also have an apathetic ring to it, which it isn't. So I went with what gives. Next line. Again, I'll make the particles and such red so we can translate the nouns, verbs, and adjectives first. First, let's break down the whole furimawasareten bit. The root verb is furimawasu. Sound familiar? It's the verb MC used earlier to describe what Mr. McDreamy does to her. Makes her nervous, insecure, swoons, spins her right round, baby, right round. If you change the su at the end of furimawasu to sareru, it becomes the passive form of the verb furimawasareru, which means to be pushed around in circles emotionally instead of to push around in circles. Then, if you change the ru at the very end to teru, or ten if you're being slangy, it becomes the present participle form, is being pushed around in circles. I also changed ore to me. It's the masculine form of me, I, and I changed ho to way. The expression ore no ho, or watashi no ho, while it literally means my way, it's basically I'm the one, or it's me, rather than you or anyone else. Next, I translated all the particles. The janeka at the end is just a rude, slangy, masculine way of asking a question. Sort of like, ain't it the case that? Next, let's address this noa business. This is kind of like the basic sentence structure of x wa y, where x is a noun and y is a noun or an adjective. Like sky wa blue would be the sky is blue, or cat wa queen would be the cat is a queen. However, since x in this case is a verb, furimawasareru, you have to add a no before the wa. It has a the one that is, or the one that's going to feel to it. Makeru no wa watashi would mean I'm the one that's going to lose, or the one that's going to lose is me. So furimawasareteru no wa ore would mean I'm the one that's being pushed around emotionally. The janeka, masculine slangy ending, comes to the beginning of the sentence to make it, aren't I the one that is being pushed around? Then, in better English, I made furimawasu mean to drive crazy, so it's, aren't I the one that's being driven crazy? Now, what I said about ore no ho earlier, meaning it's not you, it's me, needs to be expressed better. Also, the idea that in Otome games it's usually the male love interest's job to drive MC crazy and make her swoon and blush all the time. Mr. McDreamy is basically saying here, shit, you've got your gender roles mixed up here, woman. You're supposed to be the one blushing and going crazy over me, not the other way around, because you're the female counterpart in this romantic game intended for girls with little to no romantic experience. So this is where localization comes in. The entire thought becomes, you keep driving me crazy. It's supposed to be the other way around. Now, this isn't the only way to localize or translate it. I could have just left it as, I'm the one that's being driven crazy, not you, or something like that. But passive tense sounds weird. People don't really talk like that. Anyway, next line. Quick note, you'll notice he repeats the same line twice. This is because the game section cuts off after he says it the first time. Then you have to wait or spend in-game money to start reading again, so they begin the next section by repeating that line. Kind of like how TV shows will often repeat a line right after a commercial break. Anyway, MC says, "Are, dame datta?" Each word translated literally makes the sentence, huh? Wrong was? And I think you can gather from that what she's saying, even though Japanese people don't always use pronouns. It becomes, huh? Was I wrong? Or a better version, huh? Did I do something wrong? Now, looking at this again, I did something wrong. While are can mean huh, it can also mean that or that thing. She's actually referencing giving him a snowman. That's what are actually means in this case. I didn't catch it because I just started translating in the middle of the scene, but I'm catching it now. Post while I'm doing narration. So actually that line should be, was I wrong to give you that snowman? Or, oh, you didn't like that snowman? But we'll go with the former wrong line since it affects my subsequent line translations, even though it's wrong. Mr. McDreamy responds with, dame ja ne, mushiro kyun to shite mukatsuita. Let's turn those particles jane and to red. And now let's translate the individual words. Jane, if you remember from earlier, means slangy, it's not the case that, and dame means wrong. So dame jane is a slangy masculine way of saying not wrong. Mushiro means if anything. Kyun is a sound effect for heartstrings being tugged at, and mukatsuita is slang for made to feel sick. Now let's address the particle to, and I should have included shite with that thought to make it to shite. X to shite means to go X, where X is usually a sound effect, which the Japanese language uses a lot, incidentally. Kyun to shite means something like, I made the swooning sound of my heartstrings being tugged at. So, since we don't have a good word for kyun, and we don't speak in sound effects much, I had to translate it conceptually. The sound of my heartstrings being tugged at is really someone swooning or feeling heartwarmed, so I went with heartwarmed here. Then to make it sound more like actual English, no, if anything, you warmed my heart so much that I felt sick to my stomach. I usually like to translate mukatsuku as pissed off, since it's a bit vulgar and slangy, but it works a bit better prose-wise to use sick to the stomach, because he was talking about his heart earlier. His heart is warm, but his stomach is sick. Much wittier. And it will tie in with the next line of dialogue nicely. Kyun to shite mukatsukute, kekkyoku docchi nano? So, when you see an isolated te right after a small tsu, basically everything before that is in quotation marks. In this case, kyun to shite mukatsuku. So she's basically repeating his last line, but she changed mukatsuita, past tense, to mukatsuku, present tense, because she's addressing what he said as a concept. He was saying it as, this thing happened to me, and she's saying, the concept of that thing, ... Next step, kekkyoku means in the end, and docchi means which. Ending a sentence with nano is either a feminine way of being emphatic or asking a question. Yep, nice and clear. Thankfully, there's a question mark and an exclamation point, so we know that in this case, she's doing both things. So a translation of the whole sentence would be, you warmed my heart so much that I felt sick to my stomach. In the end, which is it? Which is overly wordy and people don't talk like that, so I warmed your heart, I sickened your stomach, which is it? Which actually works just fine. And I could have stopped there. I could also translate it as, did I warm your heart or sicken your stomach? Make up your mind. Or I could go with, how can I warm your heart and sicken your stomach? What do you mean? I eventually went with this one when I was making these image files for this video. But in hindsight, I actually prefer I warmed your heart, I sickened your stomach. Which is it? This is how translating fiction really can be a lot like writing. There are many different ways to express emotionally driven sentences. Anyway, moving on. Mr. McDreamy says, こういうことだよ. Literally, it means this sort of thing, and since there's a yo at the end, he's saying so emphatically. This sort of thing is overly wordy, though, and people don't really talk like that. Also, to make it more emphatic, shorter sentences are better. Plus, he's about to do something to demonstrate what he means, so I went with just this, ... That's also a line that will often happen in English TV shows or movies before a character leans in and kisses someone. I wanted to give it that kind of feeling. MC says, ah, followed by a small tsu. Whenever you see a small tsu at the end of something, it means there's a glottal stop. So instead of ah, it becomes a shorter ah. I changed this to oh, however, because I'm specifically instructed to do so. The company claims English speakers don't say ah, which I disagree with. But anyway, it's what they want me to do, so that's how I do it. And now the romantic gesture that follows the this. Mr. McDreamy ga watashi no te kara yukidaruma o ubau. First we change the particles to red. Now I'll translate the words in black. Watashi means me or I. Te means hand, yukidaruma means snowman, and ubau means to snatch or to steal or to grab. The particle no after watashi changes it from me to my. Kara means from the noun that immediately precedes it. In this case, it's watashi no te, or my hand, so watashi no te kara becomes from my hand. Then, rearranging the word order so it makes sense, it's Mr. McDreamy snatches the snowman from my hand. I changed the past tense to present because the company instructs me to change everything to present tense so the players feel like it's happening to them in real time. Next line of narration. Ashimoto ni sotto oita ato, guitto watashi o dakiyoseta. We'll make the particles red first. Then we'll translate the words in black. Ashimoto means at, around my feet. Ato means after, and watashi means me, of course. Phase 2. Sotto means softly. Gyu is a sound effect for yanking or tugging something. Phase 3. Dakioseru means to draw someone into an embrace. We're still talking about Mr. McDreamy here, so it's drew into his arms. The particle to that comes after gyu means with a yanking sound effect. Oita means to set something down, by the way, so in broken English, softly set down at my feet after, with a yanking sound effect, drew me into his arms. When the words are rearranged to proper sentence order, it becomes, after softly setting it down at my feet, he drew me into his arms with a yanking sound effect. The pronouns are in parentheses because they're not literally in the sentence, but they're implied. In the next phase, you'll see I changed the sound effect gyutto to roughly. Again, since we don't really speak in sound effectese, that's what I have to do. In the next phase, Mr. McDreamy actually sets the snowman down by his feet, not my feet. Again, it doesn't specify in the original Japanese, but I thought about the logistics and it makes much more sense for him to set the snowman down at his feet than by MC's feet. Cleaned up a bit more, it becomes, after softly setting it down at his feet, he roughly draws me into his arms. Now, the phrase, roughly draws me into his arms, is a bit wordy and not concise. That's just bad writing. So I changed it to, he flings his arms around me. That paints a much better picture. Now, even though the entire thought is broken up into two cells one way in Japanese, it doesn't mean keeping the division where it is makes the most sense in English. I like the flinging his arms around her part to be isolated. It has more punch and impact that way. So I moved the setting the snowman down at his feet part up to the former cell, then I reworded it a little to make it flow better, and the whole thought becomes, Mr. McDreamy snatches the snowman from my hand, softly sets it down by his feet, then he flings his arms around me. The next line I didn't even have to translate because she's just dreamily saying his name. Then Mr. McDreamy's dere side emerges as he says, Suggee ureshii ni kimatten daro. Suge is a masculine slangy way of saying sugoi, and kimatten is a slangy way of saying kimatteru. Sugoi ureshii means literally very happy, and daro means right. Now the phrase ni kimatteru means of course it's ... so x ni kimatteru means of course it's x. Since x is very happy, it means of course I'm very happy, right? But that's just a translation, that's not localized. I changed right to you idiot because he's the kind of character who would say that. Plus, all the rough masculine slanginess of his speech needs to come out somewhere, otherwise we're doing him a disservice. The next huge issue I have is the literal translation of ureshii. While it does technically mean happy, it's so much more nuanced than that. It can also mean flattered, and it's often used in a romantic way when you're appreciative or flattered of something that someone has done for you. Now, what would I say in English if a love interest gave me a very sweet or romantic present? I would say something like, that's so sweet of you, or I love it. So I went with the latter and localized the sentence as, of course I love it, you idiot. And the last line, sankyu na, that's basically English. Thanks. The na at the end makes it casual, kind of like bro, or dude, or man, or babe, if we wanted to go there. But he's not the kind of guy who would call her babe, so I went with just plain thanks. Hey, thanks for watching, all of you folks that are still awake. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and like it and tell me that you found it helpful. I need to have my existence validated. Also check out my second channel if you're interested in other things that I do, like cooking. I'm really good at self-promotion. Bye!